Hello everybody and welcome back to another video by Farla Tutorials. Last week we discussed about consumer surplus, so in today's video we are going to be talking about producer surplus. Now if you have understood the concept of consumer surplus, producer surplus will not take so much time, so we'll just move straight into the topic. So when we started with the meaning of the word. So we're going to start with the same idea in mind. We'll look at the word producers surplus. Let me just remove all of this for the time being, and then we can compare what we learned for we can compare between the diagram, and then we'll be able to understand what we want to find out from here. Okay, so let's talk about producer surplus. So what does the word make you think? If you go by the idea that was discussed under consumer surplus, the first thing that you would want to do is to divide the word, to understand what the word actually means. So if you look at the word, this producers, I said that there are two people in the market. There are producers and there are consumers. So the producers supply and consumers demand. So this supply side is by the sellers or the producers. So sellers, remember when we were discussing about consumers, we said buyers excess. So here we should have sellers excess. Surplus is the same, so we have sellers excess. Now why is the seller having excess? In this case, remember it's just basically the mirror image. Remember we talked about maximum willingness to pay for the demand. Here we'll be talking about minimum willingness to accept, right? So the buyers pay money, so they are willing to pay, and the sellers accept money, so they're willing to accept. The supply curve shows the maximum willingness to accept, minimum willingness to accept. What does it mean? Suppose the let's keep the quantities same, and we get three prices. So we have P1 dash, we have to put a dash because we already have these numbers. So P2 dashed and say P3 dashed. What does this mean? This means Q1, at quantity Q1, the sellers said, look, we can only supply this quantity if you at least pay us P1 dashed. So it's the minimum willingness to pay. We can't offer this quantity to you if you pay anything less than P1 dash, but at least if you pay us P1 dash, we're willing to provide this quantity to you. Similarly, Q2, for Q2, they said at least give us P2 dashed, only then we can offer this quantity to you. Other than that, otherwise we cannot offer this to you. So this is basically the minimum amount that they want in order to produce this commodity. Minimum amount that they're willing to accept. So this is their minimum amount of money required by the sellers. Now think of it this way, for Q1 the minimum that they were willing to accept is P1 dash, but do they actually get P1 dashed? They get P dash, right? For equilibrium, it's not like the buyers pay you P1 dashed, and for the successive units they pay you more price. At the equilibrium all buyers pay P dash, right? That is how we measured the consumer surplus as well. So for every quantity at equilibrium, for every quantity same price is paid. At P dash is paid for every quantity of Q hat. So even if Q1 is being offered, if you are offering Q hat, it means you are also offering Q1 because it's smaller. So the suppliers were willing to accept only this much. Just give us this much, we'd be happy. But do they get that? No, they get more than that. This entire vertical distance, they did not want it, but they are still getting it at equilibrium, right? This is a seller's excess money that they receive. They can take back home even though they were not expecting it. Similarly, this vertical distance, they are willing to accept just P2 dash, but they are getting P dashed. Similarly, if you think about this vertical distance, they were willing to accept just P3 dashed, but they end up getting P dashed. So your producer surplus is basically the area between the equilibrium price. I'll just write it in short. The area between the equilibrium price and the supply curve. So if I mark it, if say this is S, then the area will be P3 dashed ES, right? That would be your producer surplus. And in consumer surplus, your area was DEP dash. What was that? That was the area between demand curve and equilibrium price. See, for consumer surplus, the area was area between demand curve and equilibrium price. For sellers, or for the producer surplus, the area was equilibrium price and the supply curve. Try not to write the other way around, because the equilibrium price lies above supply curve, whereas here the equilibrium price lies below the demand curve. Okay, so that means your producer surplus is given by this area that I'm shading. This is the area of producer surplus, right? So this is your producers surplus, and the other area, this is your consumers surplus. Now you might think, how will we remember this? We might get confused. Consumer means buyer, right? So you will think of, you look at the demand curve. This is always true. Whenever you get confused, always think there are two people in the market. Buyers, they want to supply money and they want to get the commodity. They are also the consumers, and the sellers, they are the producers. They offer money in exchange for the commodity. Always simplify your understanding, think of it in simple terms. So this is your consumer surplus and this is your producer surplus, and we'll use these two concepts to understand something called the deadweight loss.